Warning! Warning! Spoiler alert! For Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Star Trek Discovery, Star Trek Picard, and Star Trek The Original Series. That last warning was for Alex Kurtzman because he has not watched it. Warning! Warning! Spoiler! Spoiler alert!
Moonjumper here, welcome to another sub-episode of Who Cares What I Think. If you're new here, by the way, welcome. Hope you subscribe and stick around. You might be thinking, sub-episode? What's a sub-episode? A sub-episode is a shorter follow-up to one of my full, complete episodes of Who Cares What I Think, which are typically a longer discussion, half hour plus. In this case, it was a review of the first two episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, and I'll link that down in the description below and at the end of this video. And what I typically do in a sub-episode is play an excerpt from that larger discussion, typically a subtopic or an aside out of that larger discussion. Some portion I find especially interesting that could work as its own little video. I'll play that clip and usually before and or after add some additional new or updated thoughts regarding that specific subtopic, hence sub-episode. In this case, talking about Strange New Worlds, the character of Lea Thompson Singh, presumably a descendant or somehow related to Star Trek's most iconic villain, Khan Noonien Singh. While she is an interesting character, she obviously has the potential to open up a whole canonical can of worms which threatens continuity. Although after Discovery completely nuked all pre-existing continuity in the original TOS TNG DS9 Voyager timeline, which they insist they are part of, that they are a direct prequel to, can they possibly screw up continuity any worse? Believe it or not, yes they can, while grinning ear to ear. That said, there's a couple of interesting things happening on two different sister series, Strange New Worlds and Star Trek Picard, which may be deliberately connected to one another, for better or worse. On Strange New Worlds, we have La'an and a scene in which Pike directly addresses the Eugenics Wars, except he places them in our 21st century instead of the 1990s. On the other hand, Season 2 of Star Trek Picard presents a near present day, 2024, only 2 years from now, which is clearly not our present day, but an alternate present day, an alternate timeline from our own, and also references the Eugenics Wars with a connection or two still linking to the 1990s. So what does this all mean? Are the current showrunners planning to retcon the Eugenics Wars into taking place in the 2020s or later, or are they going to hopefully not retcon it to embrace the idea, as Picard Season 2 seems to when it comes to the 2020s, that Star Trek's historical timeline is not our historical timeline, because it isn't. It's literally fiction. And yet there are many, including people on the current production staff, who insist that the Eugenics Wars cannot have possibly taken place in the 1990s in our reality, and therefore must be retconned in Star Trek's reality, which is not our reality, despite the fact that the Eugenics Wars having taken place between the years 1992 and 1996, the year the Botany Bay was launched into space with Khan and his followers, is unambiguous canon. According to Memory Alpha, Terry Matalas, one of the current producers, is quoted as saying that he wants to change that, suggesting that, quote, maybe Spock got it wrong, end quote. Now, as unlikely and out of character that would be for Spock, are you also telling me that Khan himself got it wrong? Because I'm pretty sure he was there. Roll the tape. Doesn't that just perfectly segue into the biggest canonical elephant in the room? Lea Noonien Singh. Apparently some form of descendant from Khan Noonien Singh. Nothing could possibly go wrong. We've got not one but two series that are bringing in a Khan storyline, or Khan-related storyline. We got La'an, and we got stuff happening with Adam Soong over on Picard. If if it's handled correctly, there are some interesting continuity through lines that might actually be explored here regarding the elusive alternative history of the Eugenics Wars. Or they're about to completely screw it up, just like Star Trek Picard just finished ruining Assignment Earth, one of my favorite episodes of all time. Yep, Picard just broke it. Clearly they didn't watch it. They obviously didn't watch Time's Arrow, but gleefully drove by both of them, guns blazing, then had Wesley Crusher jump out of the car and deliver the final fatal headshots, grinning ear to ear. So, no, I'm not confident. However, one thing Picard Season 2 actually got right, or at least sort of right, they openly embrace the idea that the 2024 of Star Trek history is not our 2024. We in real life are not prepared to send a manned mission to Europa 2 years from now. There are also no horror-inducing high-crime sanctuary districts for homeless people in San Francisco. Oh wait, holy crap. Well, okay, there's not going to be any manned missions to the outer edges of the solar system in a mere 2 years in our reality. Samuel Roykirk and Nomad never existed. The prototype space shuttle in the opening titles of Enterprise was actually designed, but it never actually flew. But in the reality of Star Trek, in the reality of Picard Season 2, it did. These alternate history events in Star Trek canon did take place, and Picard, to their credit, did not retcon them. Well, actually, their Europa mission they made up, but it means that the Saturn mission with Sean Jeffrey Christopher probably did take place. The Deep Space mission with Colonel Stephen Ritchie will take place only 15 years from now, at a time when in our reality, such a technological feat could not possibly happen. But in the timeline of Star Trek, it will and it did. So, what about those Eugenic Wars? In Strange New Worlds, Pike implies that our second American Civil War of the 2020s leads into the Eugenics Wars, which leads into World War III. Well, that seems like a continuity error. The Eugenics Wars are supposed to have occurred in the 1990s, not the 2020s, or later. On Enterprise, Phlox even confirmed that the augment embryos were created in the 20th, not 21st, the 20th century. And for those who insist that Voyager's future end made no reference to Khan or the Eugenics Wars, wrong. You were not paying attention. There was a model of a DY-100 sleeper ship clearly visible in Rain Robinson's office in 1996, the very same year the Botany Bay was launched into deep space, according to both Space Seed and the Wrath of Khan, in very specific, non-ambiguous language.
Never told you how the Enterprise picked up the Botany Bay, lost in space from the year 1996. Myself, the ship's company, in cryogenic freeze.
1996. It happened, and it happened in the 1990s, period. And that should not be an issue because Picard just reaffirmed that their 2024 is not our 2024, nor was it our 1990s. Unless Picard and Strange New Worlds are getting ready to retcon that regardless. Or maybe Pike just did in his speech to the dueling aliens, or did he? It's Eugenics Wars, plural, meaning there was more than one. Maybe the 1990s were only the first round. In Picard Season 2, Lea Thompson plays some kind of bureaucrat on some science board which denies Adam Soong the clearance and funding he needs to complete his work in genetic engineering, and Lea Thompson is outraged, horrifying. This is a direct violation of whatever the hell international treaty that does not exist in our reality, but it does exist in theirs, clearly in response to something horrible that happened in their past. Gee, I wonder what that could be. In the season finale, Soong pulls out a dusty classified document titled Project Khan, dated June 7th, 1996. Now, that could be interpreted in a couple of ways. That could mean a canon-breaking retcon in which the augments were only a proposal in the 90s and Soong is going to make it happen in the present day.
1996.
Or, hopefully, the Lea Thompson scene is evidence that Khan Noonien Singh had already risen to power in the 90s and was exiled into deep space 28 28 years ago,
1996.
And now Singh is going to revisit that old eugenics research to combine it with his own failed attempts. Lea Noonien Singh on Strange New Worlds could end up being an offshoot of either one of those scenarios, and I hope it's the latter, which maintains the original canonical time frame and allows for what Captain Pike says to also be true. Consider this. In 1967, the year Space Seed was filmed, Ricardo Montalban was already 47 years old the first time he played Khan. Assuming Khan was more or less the same age as the actor, even then the writers would have known that Khan would have already been born somewhere around 1949-1950-ish, years before they had even written it. They were not speculating about some far-off future tech, not realizing that such a thing couldn't possibly happen in the 1990s because something akin to it had already happened decades prior. Nazi Germany, among others, had already been experimenting in eugenics going back to the 1930s in real life, hoping to create the perfect Aryan super soldier. Khan specifically mentioned being a superior product of selective breeding and genome manipulation, the implication being some fictionalized offshoot of Nazi-style research, that he was a fictionalized triumph where others in real life had failed. Yes, the writers knew that Khan would have already had to be alive in 1967. He would be around 18 years old at the time that they wrote it. They knew this. They were fictionalizing a plausible, albeit exaggerated technology, which in a fictional setting would have already occurred years prior to 1967 when they wrote it. Aside from the Botany Bay, it had nothing to do with not understanding the technologies of the future. They were knowingly fictionalizing the science of their own present day in the 1960s. So what if Adam Singh were to revisit that pre-existing research, not even from the 1990s, but it would have been from the 1940s and 50s, and combine that with his own failed research in a more advanced form of genetic engineering, leading to a second, far worse round of eugenics wars and ultimately World War III, which would line up quite nicely with what was being described in Strange New Worlds, what was described on Enterprise, and even involved the continued research of Eric Soon, and still lines up with Space Seed and the Wrath of Khan, without significant retconning. All of those roads can lead to La'an. That would be incredible. So they probably won't do any of that. They will probably retcon it and say that Adam Soon created Khan because Discoveryverse. And stop the tape. So think about this. Picard Season 2, to their credit, has reconfirmed Star Trek's canonical alternate history to our own 2024, where manned missions to Europa and Saturn and deep space AI probes named Nomad are a thing in modern day. Not far off decades from now, but today, where a mad scientist by the name of Adam Singh is not only genetically engineering test tube daughters, he has advanced drones which can erect force fields over and around his house, which actually shouldn't be a thing according to Star Trek Enterprise, but let's put that aside. The point being, these are all extremely advanced achievements beyond our current technological capabilities. And yet, at least one producer behind the scenes, hopefully not all, has poo-pooed the idea that Khan could have been in power in South Asia in the 1990s. Why? That alternate history of the 1990s is no less plausible than what we're seeing in Star Trek's alternate history of the 2020s on Star Trek Picard, or that has been referenced throughout the canon for the last 50-60 years.
Go ahead, Captain.
We have the information you requested. Colonel Stephen Ritchie was the commanding officer of the explorer ship Charybdis,
Which had a terrestrial launch date of July 23rd, 2037. It was the third manned attempt to travel beyond the confines of Earth's solar system.
Especially if you believe Greg Cox's wonderful retelling of the 1990s Eugenics Wars as a series of covert spy-fi conflicts kept secret from the population at large, including the secret construction of the DY-100 prototype, otherwise known as the Botany Bay.
Are you familiar with the name Botany Bay?
Botany Bay is a myth. There's no evidence it ever existed.
All records of the launch were destroyed. They didn't want to be followed.
And if that just seems too impossible, you can't wrap your head around that, guess what character from another sci-fi franchise makes a guest crossover appearance in Greg Cox's Eugenics Wars novels, which happen to star Assignment Earth's Gary Seven and Roberta Lincoln as the main protagonists. In dealing with Khan, Gary and Roberta get a little assist from none other than Jamie Summers, aka the BIONIC Woman. Now, if you're younger than Gen X, you're probably giving me a blank stare right now. But when I was a kid in the 70s, one of the most popular TV franchises was The $6 Million Man and its spin-off, The Bionic Woman. In short, Steve Austin and Jamie Summers are two people both nearly killed in horrible accidents which ripped away limbs, caused severe head trauma, deafness, loss of eyesight. But in the 1970s, in this fictional universe, in this fictional 1970s, they could rebuild them. They had the technology. So they saved their lives and simultaneously created two cybernetic secret agents who could run 60 miles per hour, leap to the top of a 4-story building, see telescopically, hear beyond all human hearing, and of course throw a bad guy across the room. Obviously, and I'm quite confident that the writers were aware of this, that technology did not really exist in the 1970s. That technology does not exist today. Likewise, the writers who created Khan Noonien Singh were fully aware in 1967 that a product of eugenic experiments of the 1950s and prior could not possibly result in a man with superhuman strength in what was already the present day, not 30 years in the future. As I said, Khan would already be 17, 18 years old in 1967 at the time that they made the episode. They were fully aware that they were writing science fiction. So in a fictional universe, even one set in the present day, a 1990s eugenics war is completely plausible. The Botany Bay is completely plausible in that fictional universe. In contrast to Greg Cox's secret eugenics wars, even if it was an overt conflict, either way, it happened. It is canon, having taken place in an alternate timeline from our own. And if you retcon that canon, you are essentially confirming that you are producing a reboot, not a prequel to the original series or Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan or any of the canonical series that followed. But who cares what I think? From deep in the heart of Texas, I am Moonjumper. Be sure to check out my full and complete episode reviewing the first 2 episodes of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Link down below and at the end of this video. Check out all my other Trek videos. Check out all my other non-Trek videos. Subscribe, clang that notification bell, and I will see y'all next time.